Mel,
Yeah,
we have a major announcement to make.
go for it.
Did you know that right now all plans on Mint Mobile are what?
$15 a month.
Okay, that's truly ridiculous. Do you know how much regular cell phones are?
Yep.
$1 bazillion a month. 15 is less than that.
New customers get 3 months of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month if you sign up right now. And guess what? I use it. I love it. I've used it all over the country, all over the world, and it's great. And if you're wondering about phones, they have those available as well, or you can just port your own number and your current phone over to Mint Mobile. They make it so easy.
So if people are interested in trying out Mint Mobile, how can they go about doing that?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. And you know what's interesting? When my dad died, we actually put his phone on a Mint Mobile plan because it kept his number going, but it was $15 a month. So there you go. And there's different storage plans, but you might as well just get the unlimited because it's $15 a month.
Absolutely. All right, go try it today.
That's trymintmobile.com/WWDN.
It's me, Mario.
Mario, hello.
When we were getting ready to record, Mel and I both did that at the same time. Unplanned. So it's a blessed day to have an interview, right, Mel?
Yeah, it totally is. So who do we have with us today?
Let's let her introduce herself. Who are you, friend?
My name is Amy King. I live in the Shenandoah Valley in Virginia in a little town called Woodstock. And
Wait, not like the Woodstock, right? That was in...
Not the Woodstock.
Wasn't that New York?
Yes, New York. And I have she's a little bit over 2. She turned 2 June 7th, a daughter. So her name is Adeline.
Adeline. Oh, cute. Are you just like losing your mind with her right now, or are you fine?
Yes, 100%. Can't find my mind any day of the week. So
Oh,
she's a handful.
Oh, golly. Okay. So, Amy, we know why you're here, but we want to know a little bit more about you as a person before we get into your story of widowhood. So tell us a little about you. Are you from Virginia? Did you grow up somewhere else? Like, what do you like to do?
I grew up in Clark County, Virginia, which is like 45 minutes from here. And I met Andy, my husband, and we ended up going to Virginia Tech together. And we both got agricultural degrees. We studied agribusiness management. And when we graduated, we both ended up in Harrisonburg, which is like 30 minutes south of Woodstock. So all kind of in the same area in Virginia. Both got jobs there, and we got married. We had Adeline. In the middle of all of that, before we had Adeline, was COVID. And so we had been trying to move back closer to where my family lived, which is Winchester. And housing prices went up. We're like an hour and a half outside of DC. So we started looking in like surrounding counties that were a little bit more rural and like cheaper to live. So that's how we ended up in Shenandoah County in Woodstock. We were not, we had no tie to the area, and it's been an amazing community. I'm never allowed to leave now. So we moved there in 2020 before we had Adeline. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now.
So Adeline, is she a COVID baby? You know, there's a lot of those running around.
Yeah, she was born in 2022. So not really. It was kind of like in and out. But I did end up staying at home with her the first year, which was so hard. I was like ready to have her in school. And so she actually started daycare on her first birthday.
How old are you right now?
I am 28. I turned 28 in January.
Okay.
So elderly. She's like super old widow. She's one of our older widows. I'm saying that facetiously, everybody, in case you didn't get the tone. Agribusiness?
Yes.
Does that mean that you are like good at growing corn as a business, or what? Like, tell us more about that.
Andy was. That was his main job. Was he sold like agricultural inputs, like seed, fertilizer, herbicide, things like that to farmers, and he mainly worked with corn. So there's like a lot of jokes about corn whenever any of us talk about Andy. We had a bushel of corn from all his farmers at his funeral. So it's really funny that you say that. I worked on like the agricultural lending side, so I would like lend money to farmers.
Wow, this is a whole new world, and I'm so
Yeah.
happy I guessed corn. And I would never would have thought of the term agricultural inputs.
Yes, for
Yeah.
fertilizer.
Yeah, and seeds and
Yeah.
pesticides.
Question.
Yeah.
I've only seen like one documentary ever on any sort of agribusiness. And
Was
I
it
think it
Field
was
of Dreams?
I wish. It was about corn. And all I remember from it is the farmers were like, I grow a ton of corn and I would never eat my own corn. Gross. Do they
Yeah.
eat their own corn?
No, because it's grown for grain, like for cattle.
Oh, that's why. Okay.
Okay.
Well, they were accurate then in that documentary.
Yes.
Okay, I think we got the important things covered.
Mhm.
Corn, COVID babies. So let's talk about Andy
Yeah.
and why you're on our podcast. What happened to Andy?
So Andy was he had just made captain. He was serving in the Army Reserves. So his main civilian job was agriculture. And then he did the Corps of Cadet at Virginia Tech. It's like their ROTC program, and to pay for his college. And then he had actually interned for the company that he worked for when he passed all through college. So he was like dedicated to this company. And so he had decided not to go active duty when we graduated from Virginia Tech. He decided to go reserves. So all that means is he went 1 week in a month, and then he'd go for a couple weeks in the summer for training. So he had just switched units, and they were doing just like a normal training. It was a longer weekend. They were leaving on a Thursday, coming back on Sunday, and he had left Wednesday, or they were leaving on Friday. He had left Thursday night or Wednesday night. I'm sorry, I'm mixing that up.
Okay.
Anyways, it was a longer drill weekend, and they were doing a convoy from Roanoke to Richmond. And so they were in Humvees, and it's about a 2.5 hour drive, I think, like for a normal driver, but the Humvees, they cannot take them very fast on the highway. So they had left at like 5 a.m, and they were supposed to be arriving around 2. We were in the middle of texting, and it stopped. I got a call from an unknown number, and it was a Humvee rollover. I still don't have like the Army report. I have like the state police does their investigation, and then the military does. The military report is still not, I still do not have it. It can take like over a year to get back to you. This was on November 2nd of 2023. All I know is the Humvee flipped forward. Andy was ejected. I know he passed instantly in the Humvee before he was ejected. They operated on him for like an hour in between, like, the whole convoy can do CPR. So they jumped out immediately and were worked on him in the hospital. And then they worked on him for a full hour. But I mean, hindsight, he was already brain dead. They were getting a heartbeat, I think, but they couldn't recover. So all I know is that he was in the back seat and the driver rolled the vehicle, and that's all I know right now. Literally, I never got to see him. Never went to the accident scene. It happened in Richmond, and I was at home in Woodstock, like 2 or 3 hours away. So by the time I found out, like there was nothing I could do to get there.
Wow.
Do they send officers to your door? And is it that kind of movie scene scary thing?
So that is what it was supposed to have been, from what I hear. Andy's commander ended up calling me like as he was following the ambulance to tell me what happened. And I found out later that I think he was reprimanded for that. But I thanked him. I was like, I know you probably weren't supposed to make that phone call, because they have to wait to sign you like a casualty and affairs officer to come to your door. I might not have known for like hours or even the next day, like until they had assigned me one, from what I understand. But he was like, I just thought about like what I would want to happen if this were my wife. And he was like, I just felt like I needed to call you. so he had called me and I actually got on our Mac and I could see Andy's iPhone and Apple Watch like headed down I-95, like headed to, it was VCU Trauma Center where he passed. And I knew from the second he called me in his voice that Andy was not going to make it, but he had said, "Oh, we got a heartbeat back." And I just knew, like, I just knew.
Oh
So
man.
was this on a public, like a just a highway, a freeway, or a public road? It wasn't
Yeah.
on an army base or
No,
some
they were
back
on the
road.
highway traveling from,
Interesting.
and Humvees are like super unsafe. They don't have airbags. Like they're like really
Perfect.
that. Yeah, that's like a whole other thing that I'm like, there's got to be, I don't know. If there's something good that can come out of this, I'd love to work on a bill or something that, if they're on our highways, why don't they have rollover kits or like, we can't take our vehicles on state roads without airbags. So,
What about seatbelts? Like, were they seatbelted? Do they have seatbelts?
there are seat belts
Hmm.
and I'm still waiting on like more information on
Right.
that. Like sometimes they're broken, sometimes like they're not, the reserves don't get the best vehicles. So I still don't have like all the information there.
Hmm. That's
This
frustrating.
this might be a dumb question, but I'm a civilian, so I know nothing.
I know
So,
nothing either.
okay. Um, when somebody's in the military and they're taken to a military hospital, are you prevented as like their family member from going there? So even though like you maybe weren't supposed to know about it, if you did, would you be turned away if you had gone there?
So he didn't go to a military specific hospital. They took him to just like the closest trauma center. And I don't know. I My second phone call after I talked to his commander was from a social services worker. And she was like, "Hey, like just wanted to see like if you're on your way." And I was like, "No, I'm at home. I'm waiting for someone to get here to drive me. It's 2.5 hours on a good day. There's probably traffic. My kid's in daycare. I'm trying to find someone to pick her up." Like I was in panic mode. And I knew when a social services worker was calling me that he was dead, or else a surgeon would have been calling to say, like, we're going to take him into surgery. This is what's going on. And so I was like, "Is he alive?" And she was like, "I can't tell you that." And I was like, "Okay, well, I'm not getting in the car and driving a couple of hours until I have that information." So I said, "You need to have the surgeon call me." And she said, "I'll see what I can do." And then 5 minutes later, the surgeon called me and was like, "We did everything we could. He didn't make it." And she said that there wasn't much for me to do. Like he was an organ donor. They were like going to take his body. And hindsight, I wish I would have like gone there and like asked to hold his hand or something. Like I'm sure I could have, but in the moment I was just like, it was so daunting to me to like drive to the hospital. And then by the time we picked him up and got him to the funeral home, like he had already been through organ donation. And I didn't ask, but the funeral director was like, because Andy's brothers really wanted to see him, they were very adamant. And he was like, "I would not." And my dad died by suicide, and they let us see my dad's face. Like they wouldn't let us see the rest of his body due to the circumstances, but they did let us see his face. So I knew if there was any piece of him we could see, they would have let us. And so he was very adamant, like that he did not want us to see any part of Andy, but that was post organ donation. So I think that's why, but I'm not sure if I would have been able to see him like at the hospital.
That's such an interesting thing that you don't ever think about unless you have a real reason to think about that. And it's so variable. Like I did get to see Jason and I hated it. Like
Yeah.
I didn't want to spend any time in there because he looked horrible and I was like, you just died. And like that
Yeah.
was kind of traumatizing for me. They hadn't, like, sometimes I feel like they kind of clean him up and they take away the medical devices, but he was like still had all of the things that they had used to try and save his life. And that was kind of upsetting for me. And my daughter was there and I was like, do I let her go in there? And they were like, you need to let
Yeah.
her make the choice. And I was glad that she said no, because I don't know, it was hard for me. But I know that other people are like, they can't pull them away from their body, like they want to stay
Yeah.
there forever. So I don't know.
I don't I don't know if I would have been like that, but I definitely like as I've gone through like trauma therapy, like I've learned that it's like the hardest death to like for your brain to accept. Like it was traumatic, it was instant, and I wasn't there and I didn't get to see him. So it's like so hard for your brain to comprehend it. And that's the only piece of me that's like, man, if I could have like just seen a finger, like would that have helped me? I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah, I didn't see my husband's body either. He was in a different like state, like 5 hours
Mhm.
away, and it was like this is not really real, but I guess it's real. So you mentioned your dad dying by suicide. How recent was that?
That was in 2018. It was about 3 months after Andy and I got married.
Hmm.
You've had a lot. That's a lot. And
Yeah.
another shocking and with extra complexities. So
Yes.
how has that affected you? And then having Andy's death, that's a lot. It's like a sandwich of suck.
Yeah. Yeah, Father's Day sucks. Like there are no dads in my immediate family now. Like my dad died and it was like when we had Adeline, I was so excited to be able to celebrate Father's Day again, like with Andy, like having a father figure in my life again, and then Andy died. So I'm like, okay, now we're back to square one. Um
Just leave
but
the country on that day. Go
yeah,
to
yeah.
go to somewhere else.
Yeah. But I think with my dad's death, I had a very like victim mentality of like, oh my gosh, like nobody my age is like dealing with something this bad and like poor me and like why doesn't everyone like realize what I'm going through and like understand this? And it was I lived in like the victim mentality for like a long time. And then I like went to therapy and like we started our family and I had Adeline and then I think after Andy died, I was like, okay, like this is no joke. Like worse things can happen to you. And so I like really did not live in that victim mentality like after Andy's death. Like it was like, okay, like what do I have? Because I still have more to lose. And so I really try to like focus on that and like live in the moment because I'm like, I don't want to spend a year being in that mentality when I have a kid and it's like what if I miss a year of all these special moments with her, like I have to do my best to live in the moment because like what if something happens to her or me or like it can always get worse type of thing. So I think that really changed my perspective after Andy because I always thought my dad dying by suicide would be the worst thing that ever happened to me and
Hmm.
it wasn't and it so quickly wasn't. So yeah, I just that was kind of like a stark difference of my grieving process. And I think when you have a child that young, we don't, I don't have a choice but to make, I mean, I do, but I have to make her dad alive for her. Like I'm clinging to anything to save these memories, to for her to know her dad, for her to recognize her dad. And so with my dad, it was like we were all older. We all had our stories of dad. We all kind of put them in a box and grieved in our own ways. We were adult children. There were no children involved. And so with this, it's like, no, like we don't have a choice to go put Andy in a box. Like we have to teach a little person who he was. And so my grief is very just out there and like talking about him and like he's very present. We have a new relationship with him and that's not at all how I was after my dad.
So it hasn't been quite a year, right, since Andy passed away. Do you feel like you're in that mode of just kind of really an energetic mode of trying to deal with his death? I know that's a weird way to phrase it, but Mel, you might agree with me, but I went through that phase too. It was like, gotta do all of these things. Like I gotta keep his memory alive. I've got to start a foundation. I've got to write a book. I've got to do all of these things. She's nodding.
I'm doing all of those things.
Yeah,
Get out of my head.
because you just kind of feel them slipping away and you're just
Yeah.
grasping at anything to keep them here. And it's
Yes.
so hard because, you know, they're gone. So
Yep.
how do you teach your daughter about him? How do you keep his memory
Mhm.
alive? All of those things.
Yep. So, yeah, I totally relate to your saying you're looking for anything to get people saying his name and to bring
Hmm.
him up. For Adeline, so we had these large photos on our hallway and she would say night night to them every night, even when Andy was alive. We would do bath time. We'd walk down the hall to her bedroom and she would say like night night mommy, night night daddy. And The day after Andy passed, she kissed his photo for the first time ever. She leaned in and kissed it. So that has become part of our like nightly routine. She hugs it now too. She'll kiss her photo, and like we have photos out and we do that sort of thing. The playing the videos is like super hard for me. And like when I do, she seems to be more like, she thinks it's a FaceTime.
Oh,
So I try
interesting.
not to do that because that's like really hard to explain. But I tell her like, because she's starting to understand like familial units and things like that with like, oh, why does this person have a dad and where's my dad? And I'll say like, oh, your dad's in the sky. And like, I'm Christian. And I explain to her like, I say he's in heaven, he's with God. And she'll say like, my dad's in the sky in heaven with God all the time. Every time we go outside, she says it. And, and it's just a way to say something when she's asking where he is. And she'll say, I say, some daddies watch their babies from the sky and some daddies watch their babies from down here. And so I kind of like explained that way to her. I did start a scholarship fund in his name.
You really are checking all of my
I
boxes.
did. And that will go to a student studying agriculture who did not grow up on a farm. Andy and I did not grow up on a farm. So that's like super important to us because it's a very hard industry to get into when you didn't. Started a 5K. So the first annual 5K is on, it actually falls on the death anniversary this year on November 2nd. And so did that. But I don't know. I try and just like talk about him all the time. And like outside, if like there's thunder, I'm like, oh, that's your dada. Or if there's butterflies, like that's dada. And like she'll bring me feathers and say, oh, it's a gift from dada. And like she truly sees like all the beauty outside as her dad. And so I try to make like anything I can about him for her to like have her have an outlet to be talking about him.
That's sweet. She's gonna be like, Dad's mad, it's thunder.
Yeah.
I don't mean this mean. I'm serious. Did you meet on farmersonly.com? Because that would be the
No,
best
we met in high school.
for high schoolers. Wouldn't that be great?
Yeah.
I guess
No,
that would
we
be
were
something like 4-H, right?
we didn't even do 4-H or FFA, but we both just like, we loved the lifestyle of farming and like wanted to raise our kids that way.
They loved the corn, Mel. They were
Yes.
like, do it for the corn. Do it for the corn.
The corn that we don't eat that goes for grain.
That's amazing.
Did you guys ever want to do anything with livestock, or was it mostly with crops?
At first, Andy did want to do livestock. And then when he started working for his company, he like really got into the crop side of things. We were actually pre-approved to buy like a pretty decent sized farm for our area. We got pre-approved like an hour before he died. It was like our last conversation. So that was like his dream was to like acquire land and like be able to retire and full-time farm one day.
So this is such an interesting thing because I'm sure you have thought about this, but what if you guys had already purchased a farm? Like, what would your life be like after he died? You would have had to make so many hard choices.
There are so many like aha moments of like things happening for a reason, and like me feeling like November 2nd was Andy's day, no matter how it was going to happen, because there's a lot of wild things that happened leading up to it. And one of them was like we had gone under contract on a farm like within the year prior, and it fell through on the seller's side. And my realtor, she's like one of our good friends. She texted me and was like, or we talked in person, and she was like, could you imagine if that would have gone through and you were stuck with a 250-acre farm? And we had the same conversation, was like, yeah, that would be horrible.
Hey guys, just checking in and want to say if you are enjoying this podcast
And you want to see it keep going, maybe it's helped you through your widowhood journey and you think that it might help others on their widowhood journey, you can support that cause by joining our Patreon.
some of the things that you get as a Patreon beneficiary are ad-free episodes, so you don't have to hear ads like this.
You also get exclusive content, and at a certain level, you might also get an exclusive t-shirt you can only get that place.
That is true. It's pretty cool. There are 4 different tiers available, so check it out. It's patreon.com/WWDN.
And as an extra bonus, very often you get your names read by one of my kids, and they will do a terrible job with the pronunciation. And that's like a bonus, I think.
I think it's kind of the best. I would much rather hear somebody butcher my name than say it correctly.
A child butcher it than an adult do it correctly. Yep. So go to patreon.com/WWDN to keep our podcast going and support the widowed cause.
Yes. Thanks, guys. Back to our regularly scheduled program. Wow. We have a friend that has a walnut farm and, has had to maintain that. And that's a big chore. So
Yeah.
I'm glad for you that you didn't have 250 acres to manage
Yeah.
and a
I
baby.
Yeah, and I have 3 dogs. We were also in the middle of building a home on 5 acres. So I mean, I had 2 homes, 5 acres, 3 dogs, and a toddler. So I had plenty.
Yeah, that sounds like enough. I have a question. Well, first of all, was anybody else injured or killed, or was it just Andy?
I believe the driver was in the hospital for a few months, like following. And then they were on the left side of the vehicle, and then the 2 people on the right, I believe they walked away that night. I didn't ask a lot of questions. That'll all be in the report, I think, but I believe that's what happened.
Okay. So it's so interesting because you're kind of riding this line between a death that anybody could have. People
Yeah.
die in car accidents all the time, but also a military death. But it's not like he was at war. You didn't send him away for the weekend thinking he was going to a war zone where it was a high possibility that he could die. So how does your mind process that? Because it's like kind of in both worlds.
Yeah, it's definitely a mind F. I told people, like I said it a million times, like I was a broken record the week of the funeral. I was just like, I don't identify myself as a military wife. Like the Army Reserves was a means to an end. Andy was supposed to get out in May of this past year. So like May 2024, he was out and done. And so it was like, what is happening? Like I didn't feel like, and I am writing a book, I talk about this in there. I didn't feel like I deserved everything that was happening. I felt like Andy did, but I didn't feel like I deserved it. And so like all of a sudden having like military honors, 21 gun salute, like all these things at the funeral, like a casualty and affairs officer assigned to me who I still speak with, like all of these military things, like being a Gold Star family, like all these things, like I just had never it's a whole new world to me. Like I totally don't identify with the military. I had no idea like any of Andy's awards in the military, nothing. He would always be like, don't come to this ceremony. Like, it's not a big deal. Don't drive 3 hours to come to this. And then like at his visitation, his commander came and were like, these are all his like amazing medals and things like that. So it is a very strange circumstance.
Wow. I have another maybe dumb civilian question. So since he was in reserves, which is military, but wasn't active duty, I guess you would call it, are there benefits that help the widowed? Like if they leave somebody behind, like do they help support you? How does that work?
So another wild thing was Andy was not on a normal drill weekend. So had he been on a normal drill weekend just in Roanoke, no, I would not have gotten much of what I have because he was on what was called an inactive duty status training. So they were technically, it's like they were active duty training. So he was considered active duty on this weekend. He got active duty pay. So like had that not happened, I don't know what that would have looked like. I don't think I would have gotten like I think I would have gotten health insurance maybe for a couple of years, but not a lifetime, things like that. Like, I don't know if Adeline would have like been eligible for like free college in Virginia or like I don't know what the difference would be, but I did know there was like a big distinction of they were like, you're very lucky that he was on the in
Luck,
because that falls under
lucky.
an active duty status. Yeah. That might not have been the word they used, but um yeah, like it's crazy. Like had it been any other weekend, I don't know what they would have done.
So we know other people who kind of have fit this same scenario. It's like they're on orders for
Hmm.
this particular thing, and so it gets couched as like active duty. But I don't know if how much you know about this because it's still rather new. But as I understand it, and correct me if I'm wrong, as a military widow, if you get remarried, all those benefits stop. Is
Yep.
that true? And
Yes.
I would just like to say that's dumb
Yeah.
because you're 27. Is that what you said?
I
Or
was 27 when it happened,
you're
28 now.
28 now. So basically, what you're saying to that widow is if you want our support, you need to stop your life right now. You
Yeah.
cannot move forward. You can't look for new love. You can't try and make a new life for yourself, or else we're done with you. And I
Yes.
don't love that.
Does that even count for the like college for Adeline?
Yeah, I think her college would be, I think that goes away. I think that's one of the things. Like I think his retirement pay does and education.
Oh,
Um
wow.
yeah, it sucks because I've thought about it and I'm like, okay, like I've been married and like I think I would be okay if I met someone just being like, "Yep, I'll commit to you," and like I'm okay with that. But I'm like, I'm so young that like there is a high chance of meeting someone who's never been married before that would be super important to them. So it's like I don't know. You can't predict those scenarios, but I have thought about it of like that's very messed up.
Yeah, and I'm a part of a lot of widow forums online, and people will try and skirt the system just by like living with each other or having, but
Mhm.
they like if they find out about that, then you get in big trouble. So you can't even
Yeah.
do that. It's like, I
Oh
don't
wow,
know.
I didn't know that.
If they find out that it's a common law type marriage where you really are
Yeah.
committed to one another and you're
Yeah.
just not doing the paper, the legal part, then yeah, it's not great either. So, but people choose to do that because I don't know. It's just, yeah, you lose all of those benefits. Like your person gave their life for their country.
Yeah.
Why does it really matter what their widow
Yeah,
does?
and had I not like had Adeline, it might be a different story, but it's like she's entitled to all of this. So it's like, yeah, it's hard.
Oh, sorry. I called her Adeline. Adeline is what I meant. I'm
Adeline, yeah. A lot
sorry.
of people
Sorry.
call her Adeline. It's okay. We call
Oh
her
man.
Addie too.
Oh, cute. Okay, so tell us about your book.
So my book is it's kind of a memoir. It's mainly like centered to go to be written for Adeline. So just so hopefully one day she reads it and like she can feel her dad and learn all the stories about her parents, how they met, like what happened and like it's a little bit of a faith story, just like it's very happenstance that we ended up in Woodstock and the community has been like insane. Like when we brought Andy's body home that Sunday, I had asked a few of our friends if we could just do like a little homecoming on Main Street and they went all out. They called every like fire department between here and Richmond, which was like 2 hours, and there were people on almost every single overpass. People, we had like a police escort the whole way. They shut down I-95 when we got on, the state police did, and they just went all out. That's just like one example of like the community that Woodstock is. And yeah, it's just we only knew most of these people for like 3 years when this happened. And so just ending up in the right place. I always say, like, I thought we came to Woodstock to raise our family, but now I know why we are in Woodstock. And it was so I could have them all.
They could raise you.
Yeah, kind of a little bit of a faith story there. And it's not like a how to or anything because everyone grieves differently and we all have different circumstances. But it's just a little bit of perspective of kind of like the victim mentality that I was talking about, kind of comparing like these two deaths in my life. And there's a couple of like general themes throughout of like, feeling robbed of motherhood. Like right now, I don't, every time there's a happy memory with Adeline, it comes with like a lot of heaviness of like, oh, he's not here, and a lot of guilt that I'm here, and, grieving my old life that I thought I was going to have, like 5 kids on a bunch of land, and Adeline having full siblings ever. And I think a lot of people can relate to feeling robbed of motherhood because it's very like, you don't get the real scoop of being a mom until you become a mom. And whether you're going through divorce or your child is sick or things like that, like I think everyone goes through a lot when their kids are little. And just feeling like you're not getting the picture perfect sense of motherhood. So there's kind of some common themes that like I think a lot of people would be able to relate to in it. And also just how I've handled loss with having a 2-year-old and like how I explain that to her.
I'm really curious, Amy. You are still pretty young in the widow game.
Mhm.
What are the things that have been most helpful for you during this time period? Like, what have people done that has been good?
Anita, I hear we have a store.
Oh, we sure do. We've actually had it for quite a while. It's called the Snarky Grief Shop, and it's where you will find all of our best grief merch. That is, yes, a little snarky. For instance, it's where you will find the official widow card that you can pull and use at your convenience.
You can put it in your wallet, and anytime you need to use it, pull it out, play the widow card.
Yeah, we have glow-in-the-dark stickers. We have shirts that say, "Be nice, my husband is dead." We also have the ones that are not quite as jarring, so that you can wear them out in public and not feel weird. But sometimes you need that shirt.
I wear my "Be Nice, My Husband is Dead" to bed because I'm a little scared to go in public with it. But you've worn it on airplanes before with your kids.
Yeah, every time we go to the airport, I wear that shirt because I'm just like, listen, I got to get all these kids through security. Just be nice to me. Thank you so much. And it's worked for the most part.
Some of the less snarky grief shirts are podcast shirts or Widow Wives Club. We also have Resilient AF, right? Anita, what else we got in there?
Yeah, which we're telling everybody who cares, like Mel's mom, that means American fork, because she can't know what it really means, guys.
Yeah.
Stickers and mugs and notebooks and just cool stuff that you can use to express your snarky grief. You'll find it by going to our website, shop.widowwedonow.com. There's a lot of W's in there, so just make sure that you've counted them and there's the right number.
We will link to that in the show notes, and it's also in our app, which you can get from the App Store. Can people get it from our regular website too?
Yes, if you go to widowwedonow.com, there's a link for the shop in there too.
Great. If you'd like to show your snark or have something a little more subtle, go ahead and check that out. Again, that's
shop.widowwedonow.com.
I think just showing up, like they, on Father's Day, like one of my friends came by on his Father's Day and brought me a coffee, like unannounced. And like, they just kind of show up in little ways of like, we know there's nothing we can do, but like, we're going to do this small gesture just so you know we're thinking of you. And like, they will always, someone's always wearing, Andy was a swag guy. He was always giving out t-shirts and hats for his company. And so everyone I see in Woodstock is usually wearing a hat that he gave them. And so whenever we're camping or doing something, like one of his hats is always out. And they just make it a point to like do little things like that where it's not always in your face, but it's like, yeah, we're thinking of Andy. And like Adeline knows the hats and she'll say, "That's Dada's hat." And same thing with flags. We'll keep flags out. I told her early on because she got a folded flag at his funeral, and like she sees a flag and she's always like, "That's Dada's flag." And she thinks all flags are his. So we always have like a hat or a flag out. And it's just like a little reminder of like, yep, like we're thinking about him. And everyone just like really makes an effort to do little things like that.
I'm really glad to hear that because a lot of widows don't get a lot of support So that's really nice to hear. Amy, what is the name of your book? Is it done yet? Or is it in progress?
There's about 10 chapters done. Where I'm probably set to finish it up like on the death anniversary this year and then hopefully send it out to publishers. And the goal would be to have it released by next year, but it's called Saying It Out Loud.
Okay.
Um, how are you feeling about getting the report? If you like, it sounds like it might come out fairly soon.
Yeah. I'm dreading it. There was a period of time, like the first 6 months, where like me and Andy's brothers, we were all like, okay, like we want to get the report and like we really just wanted it to be done. And then like that feeling's kind of gone away. And now I'm just like, I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm like, it doesn't change anything, but I'm worried that there's going to be stuff in it that makes me mad. And I don't like being mad. Like I like keeping just like positivity and like the 5K and like the scholarship and the book, like doing like good things. Like I hate harping on the accident. I don't know.
What if you find out that somebody is at fault? Like, how is that going to sit?
So I know that the state did decide to come back like a couple months later. They did decide to charge the driver with speeding and like
Oh,
reckless driving. So I don't know what ever happened with that. And like, yeah, that's the big piece of like, I think when you're the driver in this situation, like you live with that the rest of your life, no matter what. It's one of those things where sometimes you're like, do accidents really happen? Or like, is there, or are they caused by something? And so I don't know why she wrecked the vehicle. And so that's hard. But then it's like she could have had a medical event. I don't know that yet.
yeah.
So I try not to place any like anger, like, but yeah, I'm sure it'll be natural that I had someone in the Humvee did show up to the funeral, and I was very upset by that. Like they came through the visitation line, and I had asked like not to know that information, and he told
Mm.
me, and it's just kind of like, how are you standing here in front of me in a week ago, and my husband's behind us in a casket, like. So I do get angry sometimes, like, but I don't know. I'm sure it'll bring up a lot.
That's so interesting. I swim at the pool that Jason died at, and there was this one time that this girl came up to me and she was like, "Hey, are you Mr. Coyle's wife?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Oh, hey, I was here the night that he died and did CPR on him." And I was like, "I don't know how to thank you. You did a bad job." Like I had so many emotions in that. She was like 17. She was probably like
Mm.
15 or 16
Was she a
when
lifeguard there?
yeah, she was a lifeguard there, and she was one of his students too. And so it was, I had all these three thoughts like, thanks, like, thank you for trying. You did a bad job. And oh my gosh, how are you not traumatized? Like, I would be so traumatized as a 15-year-old or
Yeah,
16-year-old
Yeah.
doing
to
CPR.
nonchalantly say that. Yeah,
Yeah, but
I
and she
did.
almost said it like excitedly, like, "Oh, hi, I was like, I was there, like I was at
Yeah,
that concert with you," kind of a vibe to it. And I was like, "Well, oh,
yeah. I
okay."
had they did, his unit did a memorial for him back at like the end of winter, and I went, and there was someone who came up to me. He brought me flowers, and he was like very choked up and said that he was the first one to give aid to Andy. And I was really happy to meet him because I knew at that point that like they could have done CPR perfectly for hours and it wasn't going to save him. And so I felt so sad that like he had to go through that because to yeah, like I just it was hard. I was happy to meet people who were there the day of the accident because it made it more real to me, but to meet people who were in the Humvee, that was like different. That was like really hard.
Are you tired, Amy? Are you like,
Like in life
yes.
or on this call.
No, 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 no. I didn't mean right now.
But sudden death also like is so exhausting, right? Like your brain's trying to process so much. How's your energy? How's your memory? We're like, what's wrong with us?
Yeah,
We
I
can't
know. My
remember.
memory is bad. That's part of the reason for the book is like I don't want to forget like some of these amazing things that people have done for us this year because after my dad, I don't remember anything from the year after my dad. So I really want to document more this year and then I was so tired for like the first 6 months. And plus it like we went straight into winter. So it was just a horrible combination. And I did go on anxiety meds for the first time in my life. And so it was hard of being like, is this medication making me tired or is this like grief? And it has like leveled out and gotten better. But I mean, I napped every single day. I would get up, take Adeline to daycare, and I'd come home and go to bed like for 6 months of my life. Like I would maybe go get coffee with people to like make myself get up. But it was like I was exhausted. I'm better now, but yeah, it was really, really rough in the beginning.
Well, we're proud of you for being where you are today because you could still be taking naps every single day and we would not judge you.
I'm coming up on year 7 and I still take naps. I'm
Yeah,
tired.
I do still nap. It's just like I can still get up and do things.
Yeah. Do you have plans for your first death anniversary?
The 5K will be on November 2nd. Yeah, I don't know if that'll be. Andy loved running, so the 5K is very fitting. It'll be a nice like way to gather everyone again, I think. And then I plan on just doing like a low-key dinner with family that evening. So I'm nervous that I will get really stressed out about the 5K and then like grief hitting really hard that week. And then I just turn into a crazy person.
Or take more naps.
I think you get a
Yeah.
pass if that's what happens. It's kind of nice to have something to focus on though, because sometimes that helps so that the crazies get focused into
Yeah.
like a specific direction. So, okay, we can't wait to hear how it goes. We want to hear about the book when it's finished. And if, you know, you want to tell us if you need to talk about it when you get the report, you can talk to us about it too. Yeah.
Let us know. Yeah. Do you have an Instagram or anything where people can follow some of your journey or find about your book or a site?
I do. I believe it's just Amy Page King, Paige.
It would be awesome if it was Page because you're writing a book. So you're the page king,
Aha.
Yeah.
writing pages.
Yes, Amy Page King. So that's my Instagram.
Great.
Thank you so much. Before we let Mel ask you the important question, I just want to say that Amy sent us some photos. We have people send us photos for our social media. And I looked at those photos, and the first thing I felt was mad. I was like, no, these guys are so cute. This is not cool. Like, people that are this adorable and young should not be going through this. So that was my first reaction when I looked at your photos. And I'm so sorry.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Where you are. All right, Mel. Ask her the important stuff.
Amy Page King, what is your favorite cheese?
Probably feta.
All right.
I love feta. It's so good. So salty. We accept this answer.
Yes.
Okay. Yay.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed listening to Amy. If you want to learn more about her, you can check out her Instagram. That's Amy Page King, and look out for a book that's coming up. If you want to keep the podcast going, will you check out our Patreon? It's patreon.com/WWDN.
If you'd like to buy us tacos, buymeacoffee.com/widow we do now.
And we are always looking for kind ratings and reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It really does help. And maybe share an episode, your favorite episode, so we can get more people help that they need. And until we get to talk to you again, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
I'm Amy.
And we are just two young widows and one corn widow. And we're all just trying to figure out, widow,
we
do.
Now, we don't eat the corn.
We don't eat the corn. One of the questions we get asked the very most is, do you have a therapist you can recommend for me? And while we wish that we knew of therapists in every single place, in every single part of the country, we don't. So what do we tell them instead, Mel?
We say check out BetterHelp because it's online, it's at a reasonable price, and you can be matched with a therapist within 24 hours. I've also used them and they have been great. And if you don't like your therapist, guess what? Click, click, and get a new one.
Absolutely. It's so hard when you have an in-person therapist, if you're not clicking with them, to cut them off and get a new one. So that's not an issue. with BetterHelp. So we always tell people to try BetterHelp. And if you use our promo code, which is
trybetterhelp.com/WWDN,
you get 10% off your first month.
Go ahead and try it out. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN. And you know what? I'm a big fan of doing therapy where you don't have to wear pants, but nobody knows about it.
Are you wearing pants right now, Mel?
I'll see you later. Bye. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN.